Hello, my name is Leanna. I'm a Master's of Social Work student at the University of Utah. I'm here to share some parenting insight and tips with you. And these are evidence-based principles from the book Parenting from the Inside Out. It's a great book and it really focuses on helping the parent see how they're doing as an individual and how they interact with their child and form that relationship rather than telling you what rules you should make as a parent and things like that. So I really appreciate this book. My disclaimer is I am not here to shame or blame or compare you to other people's experiences. This is just for you to maybe have some insight into your own parenting methods. So take what works and leave what doesn't. This chapter is about communication and how communication forms connections or improper communication kind of breaks the bonds that we have. So what is good communication? This happens when a significant adult warmly receives and processes both the verbal and nonverbal messages. And so the process of or the idea of receiving, processing, and responding is done without judgment. It's done with the child and their experiences in mind. That requires us to reflect on our own emotions and our own communication methods. So I liked the quote on this side because it talks about approaching the child and their communication in the way that they're actually communicating it and what they're actually doing rather than what we are reading into it because of our own worldview and what we've experienced in our past. So communication makes for connection. Why should we analyze our communication? Because children are not they don't have the whole vocabulary that we do. They don't have all the experiences that we do. We have to remember that they're communicating their needs the best way that they can. Sometimes that's through throwing a tantrum. Sometimes it's through crying and shouting or whatever. But if that's their way of communicating it. And sometimes we don't always understand that. When the child is being received and understood well, then they develop this idea of the world that it's safe, that they will be understood, that they can communicate their needs and have their needs met. When the child communicates a message and it's not received or it's not received well, they can have these feelings of confusion and being lost and feeling hurt because they were just trying to get their needs met. So I think it's important to understand that yes, there are going to be times that we don't actually want to meet the child's so-called needs, maybe their desires of having a certain toy or staying up late, but we can still be warm in our reception of their communication, saying, I understand that you feel frustrated and that you want to stay up late. I would like to stay up late too, but I have to get up early for work and you have to get up early for school. So we're going to go to bed and then we'll stay up a little bit later another time, or however you want to word it. But receiving the communication well and warmly and understanding their point of view. So here are some more bullet points on how to receive communication and how to communicate back. First, just being open, again, taking in what they are actually doing and actually saying rather than putting on a certain interpretation of it. Paying attention to those nonverbal cues is important because adults all the time say, I'm fine when they're not really fine, right? And that can be confusing. So a child might learn from that. Pay attention to what their body is saying, even if their mouth isn't saying it. Take the message for what it is and respond in the calm and appropriate way. Remember that you are the model for them and you're not always going to get it right. None of us always get it right, but just the being aware of how we're communicating and how we're receiving that is already going to do a lot for the child. Barriers for communication include interrogating, judging, and fixing. So interrogating is when we're asking a lot of questions. It can be really intense and aggressive. And it's mainly because we have a certain idea of what the child is doing and we're trying to get a certain answer out of them. Judging is pretty self-explanatory, but it's putting some sort of idea that a behavior or what need is being communicated is right or wrong or bad or good. And then fixing. Sometimes I think fixing, that one can be a tricky one because we want to help people. We like solving problems because we don't want the people around us to feel hurt, or not be happy and have everything that they want. But that can communicate a message that somebody needs fixing rather than um, a certain problem or issue. And kids want to figure it out themselves. They are capable of doing it. So just keep that in mind, that jumping to an idea of a problem needing to be solved is not exactly what the child wants. They probably want to be able to figure it out, at least in part, by themselves and be listened to first and foremost. So some points to remember are to just be present with the child. I feel like this is kind of the theme of the book, is understanding yourself and being present with your kid and or the kids who are around you, to be curious about them and not put a certain lens on that is from your own past. So resolving the issues that are unresolved or left over in your own life can help you approach a child's experiences with new eyes and with curiosity rather than judgment or interrogation or fixing. And again, remembering that your words need to match your verbal cues, or your words need to match your nonverbal cues, sorry. So again, that I'm fine when the arms are crossed or you're slamming the door and things like that. We all do it because we all want to be fine, even though we're not feeling fine. But the more that we can express our own emotions and validate them, the better we can do that for children and also model that for them. So here's our final quote. I thought it was a good one. It's at the end of this chapter. And it just talks about the process and the content. So the content of messages, that will always change. That's talking about the weather, or it's talking about a dog that the child saw. But it's the process that is also really, really important, is how do we go about receiving messages and communicating our own messages back? And the process of communication is somewhat standard. Like that one's going to stay more the same right when the content is changing. So receiving information, just be aware of how you're doing it and what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what issues you've had in the past with communication that maybe present triggers or barriers in how you're receiving communication or reading verbal or nonverbal cues. So hopefully that's helpful. Good luck with parenting.